We have Clinton Donnelly with Crypto Tax Audit. Thank you so much for coming to our event, and I'm looking forward to your talk.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be at the first Rare Bloom conference. And I want to thank the conference organizers for giving everybody free drink tickets. You might need them after my talk. So, my name is Clinton Donnelly. I'm the president of Crypto Tax Audit. We have a team of CPAs, enrolled agents, forensic accountants, and legal specialists who work together to defend crypto traders in audits before the IRS. This is a unique specialty field. We also prepare tax returns, been doing this since 2018. We represent some of the largest investors, high net worth people in the crypto field. We do our own gain calculation in-house. In the crypto tax reporting industry, we are in a crisis. The crisis is that since 2017, investors became aware that there's a tax issue that they have to look at, but the IRS has given very little guidance. The crypto industry has continued to evolve into new, innovative products, but yet this guidance fails us. When people have gone to CPAs to get help to prepare their tax returns, what you've discovered is that 99% or more of CPAs want nothing to do with cryptocurrency. They don't want to hear about it, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to put their name on your tax return. H&R Block, TurboTax, all of them are crypto-phobic. Where does that leave you? It leaves you in a very sensitive place. I want to talk that right now we're at the beginning of a major transition in IRS enforcement. We've seen, as Charles mentioned, that the government is starting to regulate more by enforcement. SEC going after XRP, going after Tornado Cash, going after other Binance and other industries. They're acting based on the existing regulations, and they're taking a much more militant approach. The same thing's going to happen in IRS. Please watch this video. I think you'll find it dramatic.
My name is Clinton Donnelly from Crypto Tax Audit. I want you to hear my client's story. In 2016, he stopped filing tax returns to avoid paying taxes on his cryptocurrency gains. He became my client after pleading guilty to tax evasion. Now the standard punishment for tax evasion is up to $250,000 penalty and 5 years in prison for each year that there is tax evasion. He was given 1 month to put his affairs in order before reporting to prison. During that month, my staff calculated his cryptocurrency gains and prepared 4 years of federal and state tax returns to bring him into full compliance. He also became an audit defense member at Crypto Tax Audit so that we could represent him before the federal and state tax authorities. If you find this video helpful, please subscribe, follow, like, and share with others to help them. Now, here's his story.
After you filed a false return, what fears did you have afterwards?
Well, initially, I didn't have a whole lot of fears because based on some advice that I was given by somebody that was not a tax professional or a tax lawyer, I felt that what I had done was something that could be argued or something that I could make a case out of if it ever came down to it. So initially I thought that I was in the right and that even if I wasn't, I was investing in cryptocurrency that was going to be off the radar. And so I didn't have a whole lot of fears. The fears didn't start after filing the return. The fears started after the IRS agent showed up at the house.
Tell me about the initial contact with the IRS.
Okay, so the initial contact was actually in person by 2 criminal investigation agents for the IRS, the ones that have the badges and the guns on their hips.
How did the investigation from the agents proceed? It took a few years.
After they showed up, I had an attorney contact them to find out what was going on. They actually sent me a letter to ask if I would be willing to come down and have an interview with them at their field office. And I showed up with a couple of attorneys to the field office, which that did kind of catch them off guard. And they proceeded to start asking me questions. And I did my best to try to simply plead the fifth and not answer the questions. In fact, I was probably a little bit more cavalier than I should have been in terms of cooperating with them. And I felt that I had a legitimate reason for doing what I was doing, and that, my Bitcoin was safe and secure and somewhat anonymous. And so that's how it started. How it proceeded was after half an hour conversation with them in the field office, they let me know that they were not going to be dropping anything and they were going to continue pursuing me. And then after that, they started sending summons letters for all of my bank accounts and financial transactions, merchant accounts, anything that had to do with the financial system that I had accounts with. They summonsed all that information. We filed petitions to get that information quashed. They won every single instance to be able to be collecting that information. And then things went quiet for a couple of years. And, during that couple year period, it was a stressful time for me because I was constantly feeling like I was looking over my shoulders. I couldn't even set up a bank account. And I just really was limited with what I could do financially because I felt like, the moment that I made any financial transaction or any move would be like popping up out of a hole and having agents, standing there waiting to wrap me up and take me away.
How'd they learn about your Bitcoin holdings?
Yeah, that's a good question because I'm not even really sure how they found out about the Bitcoin that I owned at the time. I felt that I was going to be safe from a privacy standpoint. I knew that Bitcoin wasn't totally anonymous, but at the same time, the Bitcoin that I did own was never purchased through an exchange. It never had touched an exchange. It was all purchased through private transactions from one individual that was from a hardware wallet to a hardware wallet. And so I don't know how they found out about the Bitcoin, but they did. They ended up actually dusting my wallets. They implanted small Satoshis into my hardware wallet. And now every transaction that I make or made after that point was able to be tracked and traced.
You were then contacted by one of the attorneys from the IRS office, letting you know that you were going to be indicted.
Yeah.
How did that go for you? How did that feel?
Yeah, that was a pretty scary time because that was, when I guess you could say that the rubber met the road. When the U.S. attorney calls and says that they're going to be making an indictment, then it's time to hire a criminal tax attorney. And criminal tax attorneys aren't cheap. And I actually contacted two to get a second opinion to make sure that if I had a case that we could make a case. But both individuals that I contacted had over 35 years in criminal tax attorney experience. And both of them highly suggested that I make a deal with the government because it would be pointless to try to fight it.
When you realized that you would go to jail, what thoughts did you have?
Well, the thoughts at that time I was terrifying because, during the course of this investigation period that lasted for 5 years, I was still trying to move forward with my life. My wife and I had a son. We were right in the middle of building a house, trying to raise a 2-year-old son. And it was devastating because I was going to have to, leave them and be away from my child and be away from the home and basically leave all of the responsibilities with running our life, on my wife and partner. And that's a terrible feeling to have to feel as a father.
If you could go back 6 years and talk to yourself, what would you say to persuade yourself to stay compliant?
Yeah, that's the old hindsight's 2020 thing, right? I think if I had a chance to go back and do it all over again, I think I would have. I think I would have sought better counsel, for one. I know that for sure. I would have actually sought the advice of professionals in that category that could give me a better answer than the individual that I took the advice from. I would have tried to find a way that I could have done the things that I wanted to do while staying compliant. I think, maybe it was a bit of a scarcity mindset for me to think that it had to be one way or the other. And I think with a more abundant mindset, I would have been able to look and say, okay, well, how can I, stay compliant, pay what I owe, and also still come out ahead in this game?
So true. How are you a different person today?
Well, I'm different in a lot of different ways. I mean, I guess I ended up being in prison for 6 months. I had a chance to really focus on myself and improve myself, improve my mindset, improve my physical being. And, I think I'm better today because I have a greater appreciation for the systems that's in place and the resources that our government has to make sure that you stay compliant.
You said some things earlier about the fact that it was a life sentence, really, and that it follows your act. Can you talk about that a little bit more, please?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that you learn if you find yourself in the system, is that, even though it was a sentence that required 6 months of my time, plus some probation, the fact of the matter is that getting caught up in a situation like that is ultimately a life sentence, regardless of how short or small the punishment may seem. Because what I did carried a felony with it. And, that felony is going to be on my record forever. And, you and I talked about earlier that, it's people make different assumptions based on that and look at you differently. And that's absolutely right. I mean, if I was to be pulled over for going a few miles above the speed limit and, officer runs my driver's license, they're going to see that I have that, and the likelihood that I'll get a warning over a ticket is much more reduced now.
Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think just, one of the reasons that you talked to me about having this conversation was, I had indicated to you that I wanted to use my story as, a way to help other people that might be in a similar situation. And, and when you and I talked about the fact that, that there's a large percentage of people that have crypto accounts compared to the number of people that report their crypto holdings on the tax returns, there's obviously discrepancy. And, I think if anybody can learn from my situation, and, for the most part, I think, a lot of people aren't really even sure that what they're doing is illegal or not really sure what to do about it. And, one of the things that I found in my situation was that once I kind of started going down that whirlpool, it just became harder and harder and harder to try to make a correction. Ultimately, it took me getting a case to kind of bring things to an end. And I think that if somebody's out there that's not sure what to do, or they're not reporting their crypto holdings, it would be in their best interest to find a way to do that, especially in the fact that the IRS is hiring 87,000 new agents and they're putting an emphasis on crypto. You don't want your day to be interrupted like I did by having a couple guys with guns and badges knocking on your door asking questions.
You don't need to show that video. I've seen that video 40 times. It disturbs me every time. This is the face of IRS enforcement. For the last 4 years, the IRS has asked a question on tax returns. Wording changes each year, but it's basically, at any time in the past year, did you receive, sell, exchange, or otherwise dispose of a financial interest in cryptocurrencies? Yes or no? This question comes in right in after your name and address. It's the first tax question on the tax return. We know from data that we got from the IRS at the end of May, and we extrapolate it based on historical trends, that about 7 million people are going to be answering yes to that question. That would leave approximately 26 million estimated crypto owners in the US who are either answering no, or they're not even filing a tax return at all. Now let's just look at that, 26 million. That's about 80% of all crypto owners are in the red zone. They're not in compliance. That's a scary place to be. As the video alluded to, it's a whirlpool. Once you are in the red zone 1 year, it's harder the next year not to stay there. You continue to get deeper and deeper in the red. What is the IRS enforcement approach for these two different groups? What you see is that if you're in the yellow, IRS enforcement method is audits. Maybe some of you have been subject to an audit. If you get selected for an audit for any reason, and they find that there's cryptocurrency, it's immediately a cryptocurrency audit. That's all the auditor focuses on. I have defended 40 people in audits before the IRS, and I don't know of any other tax expert who has done as many, so I can speak to this with certainty. You really don't want to be in an audit. Your life will be turned upside down for generally 2 to 4 years. You're going to have a hard time sleeping. You might have struggles with your marriage. It's not pleasant. The fear just gets bigger and bigger as it drags on. It's also a very complex audit to defend. You need to have forensic accountants, not only to calculate your own crypto results, but also to attack the IRS's analysis. I guess one question is it, I should also mention that the cost of an audit, a crypto audit, would generally run around $60,000 and up, depending upon how large an investor you are. Is it possible that there is a green zone that you could go to that you don't have to worry about audits? And I think there is. And in my own practice, I can attest to this. We have prepared 3,000 crypto audits. All of them are very complex tax returns for very ultra-high net worth people. None of them have been audited. And the reason I believe this works is because back in 2018, when I got started in this, we developed a bulletproof return methodology. We prepare the type of return you wish you had if you knew in advance that you were going to be audited by the IRS. If you use TurboTax, H&R Block, your local accountant, they're doing the just basic minimum that the government requires when they prepare a return. But we go beyond. Not only do we add additional things, how we report the data is different. We do it in such a way that when the IRS supercomputers are looking for someone to audit, that your audit doesn't jump out. All right? We know what they're looking for, and we counter that. But what if you're in the red zone? What if you answered no when you should have answered yes? What if you only reported some but not all of your crypto income, or didn't file a return at all? What is the IRS enforcement method? Well, I think we saw it illustrated here, but basically they can detect you, they know who all the crypto owners are, and they also know people like him who never used the central exchange. So do not underestimate the capacity of the IRS to know who people are. Even though they've been slow to enforce, it doesn't mean they don't have the knowledge. They hit you with indictment, as he described. When you're indicted, it's going to say, we're charging you with, $1 million, well, $250,000 plus 3 to 5 years of prison per year that you had this problem. Once you see that, it's conversation over. As he said, there's pointless to defend. There's no discussion over whether the wash sale rule applies, whether staking should be taxed at the beginning or when it's sold later. There's no discussion over how do you tax yield farming. All they have to do is prove that you received $10,000 or more of income and didn't report it on the tax return. And that's the minimum they have to show, and then it's game over. Plea bargain, go to prison, The government gets to publicize it. You're a victim for the rest of your life, as he talked about. What is the goal that the IRS has? What is the government's goal? Well, the IRS brings in $4 trillion of revenue to the US government. The IRS commissioner went before Congress this year and said he could bring in $1 trillion more if he was only given the funds to pursue criminal enforcement against crypto owners. And so on August 16th of this year, 2 months ago, the US government declared war on crypto owners. They gave $80 billion of funding to the IRS, $46 billion specifically designated to pursue criminal enforcement against crypto owners. Now let me put this in perspective. I said declare war, that's kind of a strong phrase. The amount of money they gave the IRS is 8 times the budget of the FBI. It's 3 times the funding of the war against drugs. It's the amount of money that Biden gave Ukraine to wage a war against Russia. But you are soft. You're defenseless. I'm sorry it disturbs me, but that video hits me every time. Is it possible to move from the red zone to the green zone? I believe it's true. I believe we can do it. Let me show you some information on why I believe this is true. And I think you'll appreciate this as Cardano investors because you value the importance of research and investigation. I had my staff this summer do an analysis of 11 of the main cryptocurrency gain providers. They call themselves tax calculator services, but they're not. We took a representative client of ours, as a large trader, but he only did about 300 to 400 trades. He was a multi-year trader. He only traded on US exchanges. There was no missing data. It was a very clean client and a very simple client, about 300 to 400 transactions. I had my forensic analysts run through all these services, going through our methodology, their tools, getting to a reconciled answer. What we discovered was not what we were looking to find in the first place. What we were shocked to we thought that these services, I just read one today, they said, we're the best tax calculation software out there. We thought they all would come up with pretty much the same answer, that the major difference was usability. But no, in fact, on the single most important question, which is how much did somebody sell last year on 300 to 400 transactions, these services widely disagree. They range, and it's sorted, from 1.1 million to 4.4 million. These guys aren't close. They wildly disagree with each other. If you look at the transaction counts, the reason the transaction counts are different is because each one of them has a different methodology. Now, these companies have been in business for many years. They have experts. They've studied this field. We can learn a lot from them, but grown men disagree. I'm not here to tell you which one of these services is right. I'm not in that position to say that. What I can tell you is that I'm going to show you another slide. If you're a DeFi, NFT, play-to-earn investor, the problem is even worse. As you can see, the question on the left column, the total proceeds, they range here in this, over $100 million. That's troubling. Now, I find all this information encouraging. Now, why? And you should too. Here's why. In an audit, it starts out with you saying, here's how much I made. The IRS then pokes holes into it. Now, I want to disabuse you of a notion that an auditor is fair. He is motivated, incented, and on a quota to bring in as much as he can. He basically expresses the government's opinion. You don't get to talk to somebody fair until you go to tax court. All crypto audits done well will end up in tax court. And here's what happens in tax court. Section 7491 of the tax code says that if you can show factual errors in the IRS information, then the burden of proof shifts on them. When they have the burden of proof, they lose. You win. And as you can see here, I just have to unleash my forensic accountants to rip through this. Now I have one client who we said he lost $200,000. The IRS analysis came out and said, no, he made 1.5 million. We got their data, we got their analysis, gave it to my forensic accountants. We identified 300 errors and that they had used a bogus Bittrex input file. So when we get to our day in tax court, it's game over for the IRS. You win. I believe that if you, in good faith, report a reasonable estimate of your income, I said estimate, then I believe I can almost always win an audit against you. That's why I find this information encouraging. Now, the difficulty is, what if you're in the red zone? You haven't filed a tax return. There's really no defense for that. And what bothers me is, how can I help the millions of people that are there? How can I help millions of people in the yellow zone? There's so few of us in the tax profession that are on your side. So I had the innovation that what we could do, wouldn't it be great if you could have insurance for your tax return? And that's exactly what we put together. We call it an audit defense membership. You pay $249 a month, $249 a month. If you get flagged for an audit while you're a member, we'll defend you for no additional charge. We will, at the beginning of the audit, we'll recalculate your crypto gain by my forensic team, and that'll be our starting point with the audit. We'll then represent you before the IRS and their management, IRS lawyers, through the audit, onto appeals, up to tax court. We will then, when we get IRS's opinion, as I described before, we will attack their audit so that we have the ammo to win. All of that at no additional charge for being an audit defense member. This by itself is an incredible value, and there's nobody else in the industry doing this. There's nobody doing this in the non-crypto industry. This is how revolutionary this is. I believe I'm going to be turning the entire tax defense industry upside down. In addition, there are about 8 or so additional benefits you get as a member, which are absolutely amazing. Go to our website, cryptotaxaudit.com, learn all about it. These are amazing benefits, all at no additional charge. What if you're in the red zone? What do I recommend for you to do? Well, when you're there, it's a scary place to be. Since you're all here listening to this talk, you're probably all in the green zone. All the red zone people don't want to hear about taxes. They're probably over there in the exhibit hall. But what do? First of all, you have to make a decision. Do I remain in the target zone while the IRS is waging war, or do I move towards safety? You have to make that decision. It's going to be expensive. You're going to have to sell a lot of assets, perhaps. But once you're compliant, then you can be compliant going forward, and you can sleep at night, not having to worry about 2 men knocking on your door. Once you become an audit defense member, then schedule a private consultation with me or my associates, and we will look at your situation, give you an estimate of what the tax impact would be, what tax amnesty provisions are available for you to get yourself into the green zone, and I highly encourage it. What if you're in the yellow zone? What do I recommend? I recommend you become an audit defense member today. A lot of people are concerned about their past tax returns. They had an accountant that was a little, didn't want to hear about it, didn't do it right, wasn't sure you knew how to do it right. So schedule an offering we have called an audit risk assessment. We will look at your last 6 years of tax returns. We will pull the data from the IRS. We'll see if there's any audit flags that we can detect already. We'll map it against our bulletproof return methodology and provide you with an action plan to get more into the green zone. If you are a influencer, I'd love to talk to you about our affiliate and sub-affiliate programs, because I think this is a powerful message that needs to get out. We are going to have after this talk at 12, we will be over in one of the rooms, Clubhouse 10, I believe it's called. When you went to the registration desk, over on the right-hand side, the first room will be there. Be an Ask Me Anything question. This is just a general talk, but ask me if you have any sort of tax question, you'll find I can answer just about all of them. So the last footnote to this presentation. Here's the, we have a conference special going on. If you become an Audit Defense member, and this would be for the people in the yellow zone, if you become an Audit Defense member by tomorrow night, end of the conference, then we are going to give you a discount on the audit risk assessment. Normally it's about $1,800. We'll bring it down to $400 so you can feel comfortable getting yourself in order. We have a QR code at our booth. We have a handout. You can use that to get registered for it. Last thing I want to mention is for our client, after he got out of jail, we were talking. I did what I do for all my audit defense clients. I looked at their tax analysis from the IRS. I identified a hidden refund. I was able to get him $75,000 back on penalties and interest that the IRS charged him on the tax return that the prosecutor demanded that he file. So I got him $75,000 back. We've helped many, many people get money back. When I talk about audits, how good we are at audits, 30% of our audits result in refunds. You go to our webpage, you'll see we have a check from one of the guys. We got $50,000 refund back from him. All of them get refunds. I know how to win, and I want you all to be in safety. And please, if you like this message, please encourage others. We'll have snippets of the video you saw at our booth if you wanted to see more of it. Thank you very much for your time. God bless.